Welcome back to another episode of Real Estate Stories. I care what you think. Today we're going to talk about feedback. What is it and why is it important? Of course, joining me today is Mr. Mason Greenblatt.
Hello, hello.
All right, so we were talking about feedback. So what like in the concept of selling a house, Mason, what does that even mean when we say feedback?
Like the perspective of what a buyer thinks of the home, like the feedback of your home, not just what your agent that's listing the home thinks of it, but what every other buyer that's looking at your home thinks of it.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, right? So when we list a home for sale, we have an opinion as professionals, obviously, on what we think the home is worth, what kind of condition we think it's in. Every house is different, every seller is different, and then we put it on the market. And in reality, once we put it on the market, all of that data that we have and all that information that's in our head in those conversations that we have with the seller, we can often just kind of just throw it out the window, right? Because once we say go, just like you said, the market takes over. So prior to the listing, we're interpreting the market. Once we go on the market is giving us feedback, right?
Yeah.
So how do we get that feedback?
So usually it's like a form that is sent to the agent after they're showing. Depends on how it's set up. Usually it's about 5 to 10 questions. Kind of just depends.
Yeah, it does. It depends. Most listing agents will have some sort of feedback system. If you're a seller watching this right now and your home is on the market and you're not getting feedback from your agent somehow, ask them for feedback. You have a right to know what people are thinking, especially as we record this, the market has slowed down. We are out of the COVID bubble where the market was crazy. So we all have different systems. A lot of us use one of the big players in the industry called Showing Time. And that system or that technology allows us to email a form directly to the buyer's agent, right? It has several questions on it. It's customizable. If that buyer's agent doesn't respond, our team is diligent about we follow up because I know I bother you about that all the time, right? We
Yeah.
do that. We will call and text the buyer's agent just to get an idea what that buyer's agent, but even more importantly, what that buyer is thinking. And I guess why is it important?
I think it helps give the seller maybe an idea as to what the buyers think of the home. Part of it is if it's overpriced. I think it really just depends. I think it's important for many reasons, but I think kind of brings the sellers to the most truthful part of your home. What does the buyer that was looking at it think of your actual home?
Yeah.
Whether it's good feedback or bad feedback.
Yeah. And oftentimes, unfortunately, the feedback can be a bit vague, right? Or non-constructive. Sometimes it's awesome, but I always tell clients right up front, I go, look, seller clients, we're going to get feedback. A lot of that feedback is going to say the house is too big, the house is too small, not ready to make a decision yet, just started looking. That's kind of vague. It's real, but it's kind of vague. It doesn't help us sell the house. There's not much we can do to overcome those objectives or concerns. Although if the home sits on the market for a while, we keep records of everything. We can follow up with them in a few weeks to see if that buyer is ready to make a decision or if they want to come in for a second tour. But then sometimes we get feedback that's really constructive. And I always use the example, and it's kind of a stupid example, but it's extreme. If I'm sitting in the living room with this particular seller, and we go, oh, okay, their walls are blue, right? If we get feedback, if we have 6 showings this weekend and 4 out of 6 say I can't stand the shade of blue of those walls, well, it sounds silly, but that's actually constructive feedback on a certain level, because then I can go, we can talk and go, what, maybe we should paint that room, get rid of the blue because it's such an ugly shade of blue, right? Again, a really extreme example, but the point is we're looking for constructive feedback. Look, the reality is we have feedback sometimes that will say, home smells like smoke, right?
Yeah.
We're not judging, but you know what? If you're a non-smoker and looking for a home and you as a seller are a smoker and you smoke in the house, it could be a turnoff to a non-smoker. It's just what it is. We might have a conversation about that. What can we do to overcome that concern, right?
Yeah.
So stuff like that we can overcome. The feedback is really important. And we always ask about price. Again, same thing. We may or may not get constructive criticism or constructive feedback about price, but we always go back to that rule of thumb, right? 10 showings, no offers, usually a sign that it's priced a little too high.
Usually. Yep.
Yeah, usually. So feedback is really good. I will say that our industry is riddled with agents that don't provide feedback.
Yeah, I think during the peak of COVID, it became very sloppy with people following up for feedback because you didn't have to. But now, as the market is cooling, you're seeing it more and more people asking for it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I've always asked for feedback, and as a rule, when I'm helping buyers, as a rule, I always provide feedback as soon as I have some to share. It's not always the same day. You know, if I debrief with the clients the next day, I'll provide the feedback the next day. But I always follow up and give feedback because as a listing agent, I understand how important it can be, right?
Okay.
And if that seller made the home available, I think they deserve to get something in return, right? It may not be the most constructive feedback, or it may be extremely constructive, but I want to make sure. Here's a little secret too, for those of you watching this. You may not know this, especially if you're a seller, but if your agent uses the showing time system, there's a couple of settings in there. So I can tell you that, for instance, when we ask for feedback, if the buyer's agent, fills out the form that we send them, the online form, they click through it, they answer the questions. The way ours is set up is we get a copy immediately and our seller client gets a copy immediately. No filter, and it's automatic. It is what it is. We're 100% transparent. However, there are settings in there which can stop that from happening, which means that feedback can go to the seller's agent, and the seller's agent can choose to share it with you as a seller or not share it. Or, and this is crazy, I don't even know why it does this. If some of you guys watching this, especially on YouTube, comment below. Please tell me why this particular this particular feature in showing time actually happens or exists, that we would be able to manipulate the feedback. As a listing agent, we can go in so follow me on this. A buyer's agent can provide feedback. I don't even know if you knew this, Mason. A buyer's agent can provide feedback. It can come to me as a listing agent. It can stop so you don't see it as a seller. I can read it. I can choose to let it be released to you, but I can also choose to manipulate the feedback and change some of the context and then send it to you.
Yeah, I knew about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know why. I don't know. Again, if you're an agent watching this, tell me why I would want to do that. Yeah, I know agents can be off color or, that's obvious stuff. But I can tell you, having done this for such a long time, you don't really get agents saying rude things in there or certainly using foul language. I mean, maybe a count on one hand how many times I actually read something that was just rude, and there's a fine line between constructive feedback and then being rude, right? Sometimes constructive feedback can be perceived as rude, but maybe it's really being constructive. But yeah. I don't know why an agent would want to manipulate feedback before it goes to a seller. I don't know. We don't do that. We're again 100% transparent on the way we do things. So, but feedback is important. Any closing thoughts, Mason?
No, ask your agent for feedback.
Yeah, make sure your agent's getting feedback for you if you're listing your home for sale. If you need some help listing a home for sale, let us know. All the information is in the description below if you're watching us on YouTube. Once again, thank you for watching, and we will see you guys again real soon.